The Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation is committed to serving the community through public programs that honor blues, Black American folklore, oral history, education, and cultural preservation and conservation. But this work takes funding to operate. You could support the mission through our courses, workshops, and by becoming an underwriting or sponsorship partner. Help us keep this work breathing for our people and by our people. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? Blues people. There's a lot that's happening. And today we're going to talk about Gary, Indiana, Black history, culture, and survival. How Black community devastated by catastrophe, what we do, how we do it, okay? And what happens in between. Let me look at the people real quick, bud. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. We have not been on a 2 week hiatus. 2 weeks ago, we did our very first all day telethon as we were raising funds for Porter Parish Granger's Blues Festival coming up in November, and we still need your help for that. And then last week we took off because we was at a spa conference. So now we're back. Thanks for joining us. And we're going to get to it. Go ahead, put that up, bud. So again, we're going to talk about Gary, Indiana, Black history, Black music, and the anatomy of catastrophe. Could we get to that first slide? So as we focus on Gary, Indiana, where right now residents and businesses are continuing to recover from the severe storms that struck Northwest Indiana on August 11th, some residents have experienced extended power outages. And the recovery has raised questions about infrastructure, emergency response, economic vulnerability, and the particular changes and challenges disasters can create for historically Black communities. Now, we want to begin somewhere other than the disaster, okay? Gary has an important place in Black, Indigenous, and African American history. Its history includes the Great Migration, steel, and industrial labor, Black political development, churches, businesses, neighborhood institutions, and a significant but sometimes overlooked relationship to Black music. And that includes the blues. I know most of you just equate Gary, Indiana to the Jacksons, but there was so much more even before them. So, in the first part of the program, we'll look at Gary's development as a Black cultural community and its relationship to Chicago and the Black music industry. We'll then turn to the August storm and hear about some of the experiences residents and business owners have reported. Okay. In the second half, we'll place Gary's current situation within a broader discussion about disasters in historically Black community. We'll look at Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, the Flint water crisis, and the infrastructure problems experienced in Jackson, Mississippi. Please talk with us. So you always can chime in the chat, and I have some stuff that I'm going to put in there if you want to help Gary, Indiana, okay? These are very different events, by the way, and we are not suggesting that their causes or scale are identical. Instead, we're interested in a cultural and historical question. How do major disasters and infrastructure failures affect communities that have already experienced economic deinvestment, segregation, population change, or aging infrastructure? I'm gonna give this question to Mrs. Pearlie so she could put in the chat. I'm gonna put it in our chat. So we'll also consider what these events mean for cultural preservation and conservation. Next slide, please. So Gary was built for steel. Black Gary was built by people. Doesn't that sound familiar? Gary, Indiana was founded in 1906 by the United States Steel Corporation, which developed the city around the Gary Works Steel Mill. Its growth coincided with major changes in American history and migration. During the Great Migration, Black, Indigenous, and African Americans, I'm going to use that interchangeably until you all know what I'm saying, left southern states for cities throughout the North and Midwest. Chicago was one of the major destinations, but Black migration also transformed communities throughout Northwest Indiana, including Gary. I would also say Indianapolis, but we'll talk about Indianapolis at another time. Employment was an important part of that movement. By the way, my family migrated to Chicago and Detroit. Steel and other industrial jobs offered possibilities that many Black Southerners did not have access to at home. Although discrimination and segregation followed Black Indigenous into northern cities. Migration also involved culture. Families brought religious practices, food traditions, musical knowledge, vernacular speech, social customs, family histories, and community networks from the South. I always talk about that chapter I read in American Food, I think it's called, and it's talking about the actual beginning of soul food. If you remind me later, I'll look that up. Yes, I'm not sure if that's the actual title. It's, you know what? It's in one if not all of my curriculum. So again, migration also involved culture. Families brought religious practices, food traditions, musical knowledge, vernacular speech, social customs, family histories, and community networks from the South. That makes Gary important for understanding Black, Indigenous, and African American cultural history in the Midwest. It was an industrial city, but it was also one of the places where Southern Black traditions were adapted to a Northern urban and industrial environment. What does that sound like? The blues, right? Next slide, please. Gary in Chicago. Ah, ah. I had to do that, sorry. Gary's proximity to Chicago is particularly important for music history, Black music and American music and global music, as well as the industry of music, right? Yes, it's quite close. Okay. The two cities are separated by roughly 30 miles, and Black residents regularly move throughout the region for employment, entertainment, family activities, shopping, church, and other purposes. Radio also crossed those geographic boundaries, which is very important to the story, right? So did records and musicians. So, why is this useful? When thinking about Chicago blues, Chicago became one of the major centers of post war blues as Black American musicians and audiences brought Southern musical tradition into an urban and industrial environment. Muddy Waters was being interviewed, right? And they asked him about urbanizing, electrifying his music, and saying, "Okay, so you're doing Chicago blues then, right?" And I'm paraphrasing here the question, but the answer, Muddy said, is not paraphrased. He said, no, no, this is Mississippi blues, regardless to what I play Mississippi blues, right? So that just go. What I'm doing is just confirming the statement. I'm giving you context. Okay, so Gary participated in that larger regional culture rather than treating Gary and Chicago as completely separate musical works and worlds. We think about them. We should be thinking them about Northwest Indiana and Chicago as connected through migration, transportation, radio, employment, audiences, and the record industry. One of the strongest examples of that connection is Vee-Jay Records. Now, I happen to be lucky enough to work at the AAAMC as I work on my PhD, and they have great information about Vee-Jay Records. Okay, next slide, y'all. Thank you, bud. And you know what? I should have. We'll get to that later. Vee-Jay Records was founded in Gary in 1953 by Vivian Carter and James Bracken. Carter had experienced Carter had experience in radio and was also involved in the record business. She and Bracken operated Vivian's record shop in Gary before establishing the label. Now, here's why this background is important. This is established in 1953. Remember who I always talk about. You don't remember? Dolphins of Hollywood. Why so why is this important? Because John Dolphin was doing he moved from Boley, Oklahoma to the West Coast. There was a lot of black men and women and couples that in their respective communities were founding record stores and record labels. Okay. That's one of the reasons why it's important. It's also important because black radio, record stores, neighborhood consumers, performers, clubs, and independent businesses created an infrastructure through which black American music circulated. Does that also sound like our last few um, episodes where we talk about this navigational system? That's right. Wait, hold on. Say that again.
It's all connected, kid.
Okay, now you talk. Okay, good. So, Vee-Jay grew out of that environment in Gary, Indiana. The company eventually became one of the most important black owned independent record labels of its era. Although Vee-Jay later became closely associated with Chicago's recording industry, its origins were in Gary. So I know this. This is why the first thing I said was not to discredit the Jacksons, but they were not the first nor the only, right? Somebody. Oh, okay. No, I thought somebody was calling me. That makes the label an important part of both Gary's cultural history and the larger history of Black American entrepreneurship in recorded music in the record industry, right? Next slide. What y'all remember, you all can rap with me. If you know anything about Vee-Jay Records, drop a line. Okay, matter of fact, I'm gonna give Mrs. Pearly how deep we in? Go ahead. You can read your first thing, Mrs. Pearly, while I set this up so you can send it to the people.
Okay. Hey, good folks. You're listening to Jack
Huh?
That.
What?
Hey, good folks. You're listening to Jack Dapper Blues Radio TV, part of the Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation. Our work documents and preserves and shares the histories, traditions, music, folklore, and experiences of Black communities through public programming, oral history, education, cultural preservation, and community-centered research. Our work also includes workshops and courses for individuals and organizations, interested in Black music history, folklore, ethnical documentation, oral history, archiving, and cultural preservation. Organizations interested in supporting this public cultural work can also contact us about underwriting and sponsorship opportunities. Learn more at jackdapplebluesradio.tv. Now back to tonight's programming.
All right. All right. So I'm going to give Mrs. Pearlie this piece of information to put in the chat for you all, okay? Just a brief introduction of it, along with some artists on it, okay? Before you just do a quick copy edit before you put it up, all right? All right. But we're on slide 5. Thank you. So Gary's connection to the blues. By the way, I don't know if y'all know, I interviewed Tito Jackson, and when he put out a blues album some years back. And one of the most interesting things was he was like, he always played the blues. He and his brothers played the blues. But when they were in between sets, and this is what he said. I wrote it for Blues Music Magazine. So you can see that quote there. He shared that during the change of sets, they would ask him to play blues while they all set up. So he would be up there playing blues in between Jackson music sets. I found that quite interesting, particularly to bring it back to Gary's connection to the blues, because Joe Jackson was a blues musician, right? Vee-Jay also gives Gary a direct connection to post-war blues history, right? Jimmy Reed became one of the company's most successful blues performers. The label also released recordings by Johnny Lee Hooker, okay? At the same time, Vee-Jay's catalog extended well beyond the blues. It included gospel, rhythm and blues, doo-wop, jazz, soul, and popular music. You need to understand what rhythm and blues is. We're not going to talk about that this evening. The Spaniels, who formed in Gary, became important figures in vocal group music, excuse me. Guess who else? The Staple Singers, Jerry Butler, Gene Chandler, and other major Black performers were also associated with the label.
And Denise Williams.
And Denise Williams. Oh my God. So this helps us understand Gary as more than an industrial center, or better yet, I would say a different kind of industrial center. It is not just industrial meaning a steel mill, but a record mill, right? It was part of Black cultural economy that included musicians, radio personalities, record store owners, consumers, entrepreneurs, and recording companies. Next slide, please. Yeah, no, I was checking something out. All right. So Vee-Jay eventually relocated its primary operations to Chicago and became part of the city's growing independent record industry. Chicago was already home to important companies associated with blues and rhythm and blues, including Chess Records, Chance Records, and United Records. These labels documented and commercialized music emerging from Black American communities during and after the Great Migration. Vee-Jay's Gary origins therefore connect Northwest Indiana directly to this larger history. Okay. Again, we're going somewhere, but we always have to give context. And we also have to show the significance of these spaces as it pertains to blues narrative. Okay. It also provides an example of how Black cultural institutions operated across municipal boundaries. The people creating, performing, broadcasting, and selling and purchasing this music were participating in a regional network. Now, remember, that also connects us back to this network that we discussed a couple of weeks, the last few weeks. We were discussing the Green Book and different things like this, right? Next slide, please. I'm just drinking some water. Okay. So now, Gary's economic circumstances changed substantially during the second half of the 20th century. Changes in the American steel industry reduced employment, population decline affected the city's tax base, businesses closed or relocated, and sections of the city experienced significant disinvestment. This reminds me of Boldy, Oklahoma. Race also matters in understanding this history. This also reminds me of Tulsa. Okay. This reminds me of Black industrial communities. Okay. Indianapolis, Franklin. Well, we'll learn more about Franklin. We'll talk about that in another episode. Residential segregation, employment discrimination, suburbanization, and unequal patterns of public and private investment shape the resources available to Gary and other majority Black industrial cities. This history is significant to tonight's discussion, y'all, because disaster does not occur in communities without context. I repeat, disasters do not occur in communities without context. Infrastructure conditions, municipal resources, household income, transportation, housing, and access to services can all affect how residents experience an emergency and how quickly they are able to recover. If they're able to recover, because we know there is a trajectory, a history of allowing these communities to rot so that they can take those communities and give it to someone else. All right, next slide, please. Don't get me started. Don't, don't get me started. So that brings us to the current situation. On August 11th, severe storms moved through northwest Indiana. Okay? Gary experienced a reported wind gust of approximately 99 miles per hour. I've heard on the news that a tornado essentially touched down. The storm caused extensive damage to trees, electrical lines, utility poles, homes, and other infrastructure. Tens of thousands of customers in Gary initially lost electricity, while outages affected hundreds of thousands of customers across NIPSCO's service territory during the event. Okay, the physical damage to the electrical system was substantial, and I wish I brought up. There's a young lady who describes her experience that day, from dropping off her kids to going to register for school to having to stay in the basement of the school she was registering it, right? To then going to get her kids, right? And then trying to find gas, then trying to find a place to stay. I mean, it was horrific. Utility crews have described as well portions of the restoration efforts as requiring major reconstruction rather than routine repair, which is something else that we were watching. I thought the guy was a gangster with the hat on and the suit, but it sounds like there's. I don't want to. I'm loosely saying this because I'm not blaming anyone, but it seems to they're passing the buck. And what I received, and I could be wrong, and please, again, you could drop a line. Sounds like they're saying how they allowed the trees to be unmanicured around these wirings is partial reason to some of the issues, right? So we're talking, again, a lack of infrastructure, a lack of manicuring the community, a lack of strategically placing things in less dangerous spaces. Okay.
We did hear that Gary was very poor, you know, and
Yes.
so they don't have a lot of economic support. But compared to where we used to live when we lived in Bowling Green, we had power lines in our backyard. They made sure they came and cut those down and trimmed them. So the difference between a poor community and a community that actually has money, you see.
Yeah, I would say
No.
Bowling Green has money, but I understand what you say.
Well,
Yes,
they have
yes,
more
they have a better. Yeah,
resources. Yeah.
yes, yes. At the same time, I would. They've been working to your point, and we just we first we did lay out that industry before we got to this part. I mentioned that industry left, tax left, and when that happens, resources leave. Right. So yes. Now, with that being said, Bowling Green in the last few years has been in the process of restructuring, right? Gary has not. So, in those moments that you and I experienced, to your point, some of those trees are already down or manicured. So when these things happen, it wasn't that detrimental. It was detrimental, trust me, because we lived through the tornado.
They didn't allow it to get so long.
You know,
Where, you know.
we lived through the tornado, and it did take about 7 or more days for things to get in order, right? But you know, yeah, it's just unfortunate, right? Next slide. My arm is itching. But yeah, so for Gary residents, the effects continued well beyond the night of the storm, which goes to your point about the lack of resources, right? As of this August 23rd broadcast, some households have experienced outages lasting close to 2 weeks. That changes the nature of the emergency, right? A short outage can be disruptive. An outage lasting several days can begin affecting food storage, medical needs, household finances, communications, transportation, unemployment or employment, childcare, and other parts of daily life. This goes back to what you were saying. How we were where we were at was able to, I don't want to say bounce back, but begin the bounce back quicker, right? And let's not talk as if the people in Gary are not coming together and helping each other, because they are, from what I've seen. Okay. Schools and businesses have also been affected. This is where reporting from residents become partly important, particularly important. And this is how folklore, field ethnography, oral history really plays a great point, or what we like to call personal narratives. And personal narratives is way different now than it was when folklore or ethnomusicology became a discipline in a field, right? Because right now, as we speak, someone on the ground that's experiencing this can just take their phone, log into whatever their social media platform is, and literally start telling you about not only what's happening, their experience as it's happening. So they're in real time giving you oral history, right? That definitely changes the way things happen, right? And these folks are reporting from the outages, and they're giving us their experience and extended infrastructure failure, or as they experience an extended infrastructure failure, right? Next slide. That changes things, right? That's also that it's like the Citizens Act,
Mm.
right? So with all of these different social media platforms, people can really in real time give you things that in retrospect, well, not in retrospect, in past years, people like me who applied folklorists as a musicologist or sociologist or cultural anthropologists, we would all have to go there after, or if not after, maybe while it's happening, not at the beginning, right? Interview people who are willing to talk, come back, analyze it, synthesize it, and then the people will get it later. Right now, it's going direct right as it's happening. You know, that changes folklore and ethnomusicology and sociology and cultural anthropology tremendously. Okay. So now, local and national reportings have documented residents searching for places to charge phones, obtain prepared meals, cool down, and replace food that's spoiled during the outage. For older residents, people with disabilities, and households that depend on electricity or electrically powered medical equipment or refrigerated medicine, extended outages can create additional concerns, right? Transportation is also another issue. Now, remember, we heard a few people talk about driving through water or something, if I'm not mistaken, right? Excuse me. A household without a working vehicle may be able to drive, excuse me, to travel or to another community for food, charging, cooling, or temporary shelter. A household with, excuse me, a household with a working vehicle could possibly drive to another community. And I say possibly because we've heard instances of people driving hours out and still can't get gas or still can't, do some of the things. But on a flip note, a household without reliable transportation has fewer options. These differences reflect and are also significant when assessing disaster vulnerability, right? Next slide. Where we at? Okay. Community organizations have played an important role in the response. Food distribution, prepared meals, charging locations, and other forms of assistance have been provided by local organizations and outside relief groups. Matter of fact, this might be the perfect time. I should have put it. Where did I put it? Uh, Here. I'm gonna put this on a document for y'all. When I say for y'all, I'm talking to the team. And please share. I wouldn't do it all at one time, right? You see where I'm putting it? Put it here, okay? I'm gonna put it at the bottom, okay? I was informing Miss Pearlie where I'm putting the information, guys. Okay.
And what is this to where they could donate and stuff like that?
Yeah, how they could share. What you say, Sammy?
Put
Oh,
in the banner.
yeah, put it in the banner.
Mhm.
Now remember, the banner is 200 characters. Okay. Ah, ah, ah. Okay. So uh, okay, so cultural knowledge becomes relevant in these situations. Why? Because churches, neighborhood organizations, restaurants, nonprofits, and informal networks often know who the elders are, where vulnerable residents live, which families need assistance, and how information moves through the community. These are the relationships that are part of the community's social infrastructure, right? Excuse me. They should be recognized. They should be recognized as an important component of disaster response. Okay. Now, mind you, we as a folklorist, as an applied folklorist and ethnomusicologist, just giving some context. Okay. Sociologists, cultural anthropologists, archaeologists, and the like, those of you who are what I like to call the humanities, some people call the social sciences, chime in and talk with us on this, all right? Next slide, bud. Black owned businesses have also experienced the effects of the prolonged outages. Jocelyn Kelly, owner of Jay's Breakfast Club in Gary, reported losing power for more than a week and estimated significant losses in sales. Okay? At the same time, her business and others found ways to participate in feeding residences. So this illustrates two dimensions of disaster recovery. Businesses can suffer financially during an extended infrastructure failure, while some of those same businesses become important gathering places and resources and sources of assistance. You remember when we had that big storm in New York and all the downtown, the west side and the east side flooded? I worked in the speakeasy at the time, and it was flooded up to where our speakeasy was, and a lot of the bars opened up because no one had power. So the community came out not just to have drinks, but essentially to have a common place where people felt safe and had food. You know, so for cultural preservationists, this reminds us that a neighborhood business may have significance beyond its commercial function, which is why I need to pull up that. You know what, Mrs. Pearly, give us another piece while I look for this real quick.
The African American folklores. Tonight's program is also part of the larger cultural preservation work connected to the African American folklores. The African American folklores provides a platform for Black communities, scholars, community researchers, tradition bearers, artists, and cultural workers to document and contextualize Black folklore on our own terms. Through the magazine, multimedia programming, educational resources, interviews, and community scholarship, we are building an archive of Black cultural knowledge that reaches beyond what is traditionally preserved by academic and cultural institutions. You can support this work through membership, subscriptions, contributions, and sponsorship. Your support helps us continue documenting Black cultural traditions and making this work publicly accessible.
Yes, I'm gonna put this. Share this, Mrs. Pearly, if you see it. If not, I'll tell. Oh, look, no, share this because you may not be able to share what I just said. Share this. This is the name of the piece. Those of you who are part of JSTOR is accessible to it. Those who are not, take one of my courses or workshops and you'll get it and we can discuss it in detail. It is called The Origins of Soul Food in Black Urban Identity, Chicago 1915 and 1947. You're right. This is a very important read by Tracy and Poe. And she also has a book chapter that accompanies that's part of it. Okay. Uh, I'll, I'll get to that another time, but I wanted you all to check that out because she describes a lot of stuff in Chicago. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. So at this point, we can begin asking the larger question guiding tonight's program. How does a severe weather event become a larger social issue? All right, I'm going to send this to the fam so they could put this in as well. All right, this is I'm gonna put at the bottom. All right, of the document. You hear? So somebody, well, what the heck? No, no, that wasn't you. I copy pasted one word. All right, there it is. So let's read that question one more time before it's dropped into. uh and again, y'all are really quiet tonight. What's happening? Y'all are really quiet tonight. Exactly. Come on. So the question that's guiding this evening's program: how does a severe weather event become a larger social disaster? Right? The physical hazard is one part of the answer, obviously, right? But researchers who study disasters also examine vulnerability. Okay? That includes housing conditions, infrastructure, income, age, health, transportation, access to information, government capacity, and other factors. So recovery is also uneven. And if you all know from what I've been talking about for weeks, months, and even years, this is not a neutral setting. Okay? Some households have insurance, savings, transportations, generators, and alternative housing. Others do not. We remember this during COVID, right? And we remember this during what we're going to discuss next. So this does not mean that the storm itself discriminates, hopefully. Yes? We say that again? Got it. Get busy, brother. Thank you. Thank you, Brother Gabriel. So some believe Dick Gregory shared with us that hurricanes and tornadoes are angry black folk that were enslaved, imprisoned, right?
That's why if you look at the weather patterns, it's coming
Correct.
from Africa.
But but there's also the idea that there's some folk that believe today's weather patterns are actually acts of warfare and are controlled by government entities. Now, we're not going to get into all that this evening because that's not necessarily what we talk about. Maybe we'll talk about that next week because I love talking about both sacred, supernatural, and conspiracy theories of the government. So maybe we could discuss all three, right? But as of now, some people believe that storms do not discriminate. However, what does happen is that existing social and economic conditions can influence how severely people experience the consequences of these disasters. Okay? Next slide. So let's get to this. All right, let's talk about this. I don't want to use that term, that's someone else's part. Let's discuss Katrina. Okay? Hurricane Katrina, thank you. Hurricane Katrina provides one of the most extensively studied examples of this relationship between natural disaster and black communities and everything in between. Okay. And there's a great project. I have the book somewhere on my shelf that a professor, now colleague of mine, worked on uh, based on Katrina. If I could find that, I'll put that up for you all. Katrina struck the Gulf Coast in 2005 of August, and failures in the levee system contribute to the catastrophic flooding in New Orleans. Some people say it was blown up. Okay, black folk and lower income residents were disproportionately affected by several aspects of the disaster and its aftermath. Lord knows I want to, but we're not going to get into that. right now. We're just gonna stick to the topic. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. Transportation influenced evacuations. Housing affected people's ability to return. Because my blood, my family was affected by this. You know, and this is when the infamous moment when Kanye West said George Bush does not care about black people happened, and Chris Tucker had no idea what to say. Yeah, no, exactly. And then homeboy from Canada that was on SNL who played Groovy Man, I forgot his name. Michael something. He was standing next to Kanye West. He had no idea what to do either. Anyway, employment and financial resources affected recovery. Large numbers of residents were displaced to other cities and states, not to return. For scholars of culture, that displacement created another concern. So here's another question that I'm gonna pose to y'all. I'm gonna give to the family to post. Sammy, I'm gonna kick your can, or did I do that? What happens to cultural traditions when the community or communities responsible for maintaining them are geographically dispersed? How many times do we see this? All right, I dropped it in there, so somebody throw that in there. Next slide, please.
Where is it? Oh, okay. Thank you, baby.
So, Katrina and cultural continuity. New Orleans is internationally known for black folk musical and cultural traditions, but those traditions depend upon community. Musicians need venues and audiences. Social aid and pleasure clubs need members and neighborhood networks. Churches need congregations. Second line traditions depend upon streets, organizations, musicians, and participants. Families maintain foodways, oral histories, religious traditions, and neighborhood knowledge. When people are displaced, those relationships can be interrupted. I should, you know what? Next time I may have uh, somebody from these different communities chime in because that's what we do here, right? When people are displaced, those relationships can be what? Interrupted, okay? So, this is one way my scholarship that we've been developing over the past few years, blues ecology that comes from the blues narrative can contribute to disaster studies and cultural preservation and conservation, right? It encourages us to consider relationships among environment, labor, community, sound, memory, and cultural practice when evaluating what has been damaged or displaced. Right? Were you writing a thought or?
No, I was doing something else. It's fine.
How dare you? All right, let me get a little something to drink here. What I'm drinking is some fresh water, ginger with the skin on it, mint leaves. And what kind of tea do I have, y'all? Babe, Sammy?
Green.
Matcha green tea with turmeric. Ah, ah, Mrs. Burley said I got a lot going on. So now, next slide. Like I said, we're going to go through these black communities, right? The Flint water crisis gives us a different example, okay? This was not a hurricane or major wind event nor a tornado, um, in so many words, if you will, right? This was where residents were exposed to contaminated drinking water following changes to the city's water supply and failures in water treatment and government oversight. This is where my man comes in. Bless the dead, Eric Mays, because he wasn't having it. Eric Mays was letting them know, okay? Flint, Michigan is a majority black city. You know what was interesting to me about this Flint, Michigan situation? Are you asking me what? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, tell us.
Oh. Mommy mad I mentioned Eric May. What was really interesting to me about the Flint, Michigan fiasco is the fact that Moses smacks the rock of Flint and water comes out. Is that not correct in the Bible? Let's look it up. Hold on, y'all. I gotta look this up.
Like folklore.
Huh?
I heard that was folklore. Was it real?
Folklore. Folklore is real. How dare you?
Folklore is real, but that story, I don't know how true it is.
Was it in the Bible? This is what I'm asking.
You know, during my studies, I have not come across that. And if I did, I don't remember. I know about the 2 tablets.
Okay. Let's see here.
Really, Sammy?
Oh, point of information. The Bible speaks of God bringing water out of the rock of Flint. Okay? Deuteronomy 8:15. Wait, hold on. Exodus 17, 1 through 7. The Israelites have no water. God tells Moses to strike the rock at Horeb with his staff, and water comes out for the people to drink. The passage, that particular passage, does not call that rock Flint. Okay? However, Deuteronomy 8:15 later describes God's provision in the wilderness as bringing water out of the rock of Flint. So I'm somewhat correct, I guess. But
necessarily mean Flint, Michigan.
Oh no. Okay. I never said it meant. See, no. Did you hear what I said? I said it was ironic that the problem of Flint was water, and in the Bible, God brings that. Let me just read it again so we could be clear. God's provision in the wilderness as bringing water out of the rock of Flint. That's what I said. I didn't say the Bible was. I said it was interesting. There's a water problem in Flint, and the Bible speaks about God bringing out water from the rock of Flint. Right? So, Flint being a major black city, the crisis became, and it's good that you asked me to, clarify. Well, not clarify, but yeah, I guess you say give a context, clarify, so everyone can understand what I'm saying. Because nowadays, folks will take a piece of it and run with it, and if not knowing what I'm, maybe not understanding what I'm actually saying. Okay. So the crisis in this majority black city became a major environmental justice issue and raised questions about aging infrastructure, government responsibility, public health, and whether residents' concerns were taken seriously. And I'll take it a step further, whether Black American residents' concerns were taken seriously. Okay, let's be clear. Flint demonstrates that infrastructure itself can become the source of a disaster, but it also demonstrates and indicates the response to a particular community. Right or wrong? Next slide, please. This one bothers me even worse than Flint because of some of the things that I was told. I'm not going to repeat it because I don't have proof of it. Jackson, Mississippi, another case where residents have experienced repeated problems involving the municipal water system, including interruptions in service, problems, boiling water notices, and major system failures. Jackson, again, is what? Majority a black city. Indigenous, black. Y'all know what I'm saying. Just like all over, but come on. Its water crisis developed over many years and involved questions about aging infrastructure, municipal finances, state and local government relationships, and long term investments. So these are some of the things that I said I was told off air throughout the years. I'm not going to repeat it, but in general, these finances, these relationships, these leaders, and these investments, and how the lack of or allowing something to fizzle out for the purpose of someone else coming in seems to be also a continuum, if you will, right? So this does different substantially from the sudden storms that struck Gary. Don't get it twisted. However, both situations allow us to examine how infrastructure affects the everyday cultural and social life of a Black American community or a low to no income American community. Because I'm sure there are poor white folks suffering. I'm also sure that whatever you are, I'm sure if you're in these places, you're suffering. Next slide, please. So we should be careful when comparing these examples. Gary, Norlands, Flint, and Jackson have similar yet different histories, right? The causes of these disasters are definitely, well, I don't say definitely. The causes of the disaster, meaning what exposed the infrastructure, were different. The scales are different. Katrina and Gary are close in proximity, right? Their governmental structure, um, I want to say reflect each other, but are different. However, what they allow us to compare are certain questions. So let's get into these questions. And I'm not necessarily here to answer these questions. I'm here to throw these questions out, get you all to contemplate, right?
And join in on the conversation.
That's right, Mrs. Pearlie, and join in on the conversation. So, first question: how does pre-existing infrastructure affect vulnerability? Right, and specifically to Black Americans, how does pre-existing infrastructure affect vulnerability in targeted communities? How does income affect recovery? What role does race play in the history of investment and disinvestment? How are residents represented by the media? Now, I have to say, so far, what I've seen in this particular Gary situation, the residents are represented of all colors and all races and of all creeds and all sexual identities and everything as upstanding, humane folk, and that can articulate what they're experiencing and that are eager to help each other. That's what I've seen, and I love that. Okay. How quickly do government agencies and private companies respond? And is it different for Black communities? Is it different for poor communities and Black poor? Okay. And what happens to cultural institutions during prolonged disruption? So, cultural institutions, as we said earlier, churches, local businesses, organizations and institutions that help community members. Okay? Those are useful comparative questions. And it also does not treat the communities interchangeably. Do you understand what I'm saying? Excuse me, next slide. Drinking some agua. Okay. The term resilience is frequently used when discussing communities recovering from disasters. Resilience is used a lot when we're talking about the underdog, right? There is value in recognizing community resilience. Residents organize food distribution, churches provide assistance, businesses help neighbors, families check on elders, community organizations distribute information and resources. Those practices should be documented and supported. Again, this is where us as cultural workers, if nothing else, can offer guidance to community members on how to collect this data and how to archive this data and material items. Okay. But resilience should not replace questions about institutional responsibility and the possibility of any of the isms. Community organizations cannot permanently substitute for reliable electrical systems, safe drinking water, functioning transportation, emergency planning, public investment, or accountable government. Y'all need to check Chief Warhorse. Chief Warhorse of the Tchefuncte Nation has preparation plans for communities, particularly for moments like this.
Her page on YouTube is called Cooking Up with Chief. Right?
Cooking with Chief, that's right.
Chief.
Cooking with Chief. Matter of fact, let me send y'all a couple of things. Do you have anything to read, Mrs. Pearly, while I get this for the peoples?
I do. Hold on a second. It's me. I'm back, good folks.
Make sure you're talking into the mic. Can y'all hear, mommy?
All right, good folks. Jack Dapper Blues offers courses and workshops for people who want to move beyond simply consuming Black history and begin learning how to document, preserve, and responsibly engage cultural traditions. Our programs explore blues history, Black folklore, songwriting, community documentation, ethical fieldwork, oral history, archiving, and cultural stewardship. These programs are available in different formats for individuals, organizations, educational institutions, and community groups. If your organization is interested in hosting a workshop, sponsoring educational programming, underwriting a broadcast, or bringing Jack Dapper Blues programming to your community, visit jackdapperbluesradio.tv for more information.
You can let that clap a little more. Okay, it's okay. What I'm gonna do, good people, not right now. I'm going to make sure I get from Chief Warhorse because and I also have it. Her preparedness, her disaster preparedness, readiness information. Okay. Now,
Sammy, can you share that? I can't do it from over here.
what I just said in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
Recognizing community strength and demanding institutional accountability are not contradictory positions. All right. Yes, we could do both. Did you see in the phone chat? Next slide, young man. So you all know I love to ask this question. Who gets to tell the story? Right? I got my man book right here, my homie, Chris Thomas King, The Blues, the authentic narrative of my music and culture, because he gets to tell the story. That's one of the things he's always fought for, as do I. I got another good gentleman, Dr. William H. Turner, The Harlan Renaissance, Stories of Black Life in Appalachian Coal Mining Towns. Great, 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 great book.
What was the first book? I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Here, I'll give you both of them. Okay. And I mention those two books because they are examples of who gets to tell the story. We do, right? Cultural preservation and conservation can also become part of disaster recovery. Oral histories can document residents' experiences. Now, mind you, I did say a few moments ago that folk are actually, whether they know they're doing this or not, but throw the camera on me. Let me look at my people. What's happening, tribe? I did say a few moments ago whether the community and the residents on the ground know it or not, or understand the terminology. And when I say understand the terminology, I'm not being facetious or being condescending, right? No one goes around saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go do field ethnography," you know, if you're not in the discipline, you know. But what a lot of folks on the ground in these places, particularly we're talking about Gary and other northern Indiana spaces that have suffered from this disaster, they are actually conducting and documenting oral histories in real time in this moment, right? And it's going straight out to the masses via social media. So you're seeing oral history, you're seeing significant information uh, being disseminated through the people in real time. I love that. That is the new way of oral history, even though the original and more traditional way of oral history is still very relevant. And that's what I'm getting to now, right? Because we should be preparing to help folks on the ground, if not document and collect their oral histories, at least help them learn how to, well, take their oral histories that they've already collected, because when you go live you still get to save these videos, and we should be helping them archive this and putting them in hard drives in different places. Okay, bring that up again, bud. I just want y'all to understand this is really serious. This is where we come in to help. Okay. Okay. Oral histories can document residents' experiences. Photographs and family records can preserve neighborhood history. And please, Lord, if nothing else, and mind you, when we were involved in that historic tornado, the night during, we were not saying grab the pictures. Okay. I didn't even say grab my national. Okay. That's real. But once you are safe, and now if you're able to get into your homes, if it's not contaminated or not dangerous, please, please get photographs, get family records, put them in a garbage bag, take it home, and sign up for my archive course. God bless you. Okay. Church records, business records, flyers, music collections, if possible, get these things. And community archives can help document institutions that may be damaged or displaced. Meaning, in the process of cleaning up, if you come across any of these things I mentioned and anything that's in alignment to what I've mentioned, that's not garbage. That's why our archive course is called Black Junk, because most people, in some cases, don't they call it junk and don't understand the value in what it is. It's not junk. Okay. Researchers and cultural organizations can also map how environmental and infrastructure changes affect cultural spaces. So those of you that's in the field and in the discipline, we should be lining up to help these people. Okay, in the best in our expertise and how we can. Okay, which is what we plan to do. Right. The goal is not simply to create an archive of disaster. So ultimately, this is not disaster porn. Okay, at all. Okay. Matter of fact, I could think of was a place in North Carolina that had that horrible flood a couple of years back. Asheville. God bless them. Right. As people were helping, they were also making sure they were collecting relevant and important pieces of documented history. Okay, so ultimately, what I'm suggesting and hoping that you all can do is document how communities respond, what they value, what changes, and what residents believe should be preserved and conserved, and utilize the communal language. Everybody doesn't use the term conserve. Okay, archive, the term archive has become more popular in recent days. People weren't using that word before. Okay, community participation and access is central to what we do and to our work. So in going into communities, particularly in a situation this sensitive, access is not important, participation is not important, being the proper steward of someone else's catastrophe is extremely essential. And that's where Beyond the Romance comes in. Okay? Next slide.
And you know what else is important?
Speaker to the mic, please.
What's important? We live in the world of AI, and a lot of these stories can be changed at the drop of a dime. So when you personalize and document what you see, what you hear, the effects of it, and stuff like that, you have an original account. It's not altered. So this is why now more than ever, things information needs to be preserved correctly amongst us as a community and individually.
Agreed. And again, in doing that, take our courses and we can help you do that.
Yes, absolutely. Take our courses.
So now, as Gary continues recovering from the August 11th storm, its current situation should be understood within its larger history. Gary is an important site of Black labor history, Black indigenous labor history. It is a part of the history of the Great Migration. It has important place in Black political history. And through Vee-Jay Records, the Spaniels, Jimmy Reed, Johnny Lee Hooker, gospel rhythm and blues, and its relationship with Chicago, Gary also belongs in the history of Black American music. And notice, the Jacksons are very important. Don't get me wrong. I didn't mention them not because they're being because I'm disrespecting them. Not at all. We all know what the Jacksons have contributed and what Michael Jackson has contributed. But you need to know before them, there were so many more people. Vee-Jay Records is significant. Before Motown, there was the Dolphins of Hollywood and Vee-Jay Records. You guys got to understand this. Understand King Records. Okay? This is what I'm trying to say with this. All right. The percentage of outages is another chapter in the history, or this particular history, okay? It should not become the city's entire story. However, understanding what existed before the disaster gives us a better way to evaluate what has been affected and what recovery should protect. And how, exactly how Black communities are treated in these moments. Next slide, please. Slide after that. As we close this portion of the program, I want to bring the conversation to our audience. So, for listeners and viewers, possibly in Gary and northern Indiana, northwest Indiana, if you're listening, and we're going to drop this. In matter of fact, let me make sure that my family has this, so they can my production team family has this. My production team is my family. Sammy, I'm gonna kick your can, so they could share this.
Let me just say, is my mic on?
Yes.
Programs like tonight's broadcast are possible because people believe Black cultural history deserves to be researched, documented, preserved, and publicly shared. You can support Jack Dapper Blues and the African American folklorists through membership, donations, sponsorship, underwriting, workshops, courses, and partnerships.
Ha ha. Thank you for that, Mr.
And it's not simply about preserving old music. It's also about preserving the communities, people, history, traditions, environments, and experiences that give the music meaning. So visit jackdapplebluesradio.tv to learn more about our programming and ways to support the work. And that's exactly what I mentioned prior to me reading the ad,
Yes. YES. Okay, so for listeners and viewers in Gary, Northwest Indiana, and everywhere else, what do people outside Gary need to understand about what is happening there right now? For our broader audience, did knowing Gary's connection to Vee-Jay Records and Black music change how you think about the city? What should be included when we measure disaster recovery? Should we measure only restored electrical service and repaired buildings? Or should we also consider businesses, churches, cultural institutions, neighborhood relationships, archives, traditions, and people's ability to remain in their communities? And finally, how can public media document Black communities experiencing catastrophe without allowing catastrophe to become the definition of those communities? But let me look at the tribe. So that's what we are asking. That's what we're discussing. That's what we're opening up for our tribe to contemplate. We're not giving answers. We are giving suggestions and tools to find answers, suggestions and tools to document your people and experiential events like such. Okay. Thank you for joining us. Um, we pray for the good folk that are experiencing and suffering from these disasters. Um, and we're cheering on those who are actually out there helping them in the moment. If you need information on how to help, you can look at our right down there. If you need beginners information, if you're out there on the ground and want to document, want to collect oral histories and the like, contact me, and I will give you a startup kit. Okay, if you're interested in taking courses, definitely contact me. All right.
And the Well Workbook.
The Well Workbook is a great place to start as well. Okay.
And check out the online magazines as well.
Check out the online magazines. Hell, check out the physical print copies while you're at it.
Buy one of those as part of your archive.
Exactly.
In present time.
In present time, it becomes what you do right now. The archive in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Also, subscribe to the Substack and Patreon because we will soon be doing a different kind of reflective program where the folks that are taking these courses and workshops that we offer will be over there discussing their journey in our coursework. If you want to participate, become a member of Patreon, but you also have to take the course or join one of the workshops. All right? God bless. Have a great week. Contact us if you want us to look into anything, or if you want to submit to write for the African American Folklorists. All right? Have a great week, y'all. Oh, subscribe, share, donate, all of the above. We got some new things we'll be rolling out soon. Take care, good folks. The Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation is committed to serving the community through public programs that honor blues, Black American folklore, oral history, education, and cultural preservation and conservation. But this work takes funding to operate. You could support the mission through our courses, workshops, and by becoming an underwriting or sponsorship partner. Help us keep this work breathing for our people and by our people. The Jack Dapper Blues Heritage Preservation Foundation